I'd like to ask, and of course, leave your comments. Uh, have you ever run these in your games before? Have you pinned your players up against one of these Ki-Rin? The Ki-Rin is such a interesting creature when you get down to it. And have you fought the players? Have you run them against an evil campaign? Have you run them against a good campaign? How has that changed? Um, of course, I'm your GM Isaiah, and this is Game Master's Arsenal. This week, we're talking about the Ki-Rin, which you'll find in Mordekainen's Monsters of the Multiverse, or Volo's Guide to Monsters. I think it's Volo's Guides. Yeah, it's Volo's Guides. Now, of course, the Ki-Rin is a mythical creature that we all know of, at least in D&D and a higher level. Of course, we're going to be talking about its origins, its mythological origins, how you might use it in your campaigns, its various roles that it takes within the system, of course, and how to fight this thing. Not how your players will fight this thing more likely, and how you as a GM can fight your players with it. Now, to get started, the Ki-Rin has its roots within Eastern mythology, where it was analogous to a unicorn. It's kind of weird. So Keelan's it's actually spelled with a Q in Chinese mythology, uh where it is a benevolent celestial being, draconic, with this horn that uh either heralds or follows the arrival of a sage or great ruler, mostly from the celestial realm. So you can expect Ki-Rin to hold a very celestial majesty to them when they come through. They symbolize good fortune, wisdom, prosperity. When it comes through, treating them well. Now, with that draconic look to them, they very much have a celestial regality to them, and I think as a DM, you need to take that into account. Uh, Most of their common traits within the mythology, of course, they're a symbol of divine judgment and grace. They only appear in times of peace. They foretell great leaders, great sages, and of course, they walk on clouds across bodies. In D&D, this carries into the fact that they fly. Now, in 5e, the Ki-Rin plays a bit of a different role. It acts more as a messenger. In D&D lore, especially in 5e, it is a messenger of the gods. It also can take up residence within the mortal realm to teach people. It sets up aries in the mountains where people trek to. It has regional effects that cause all things to happen and the place to become very, very abundant. Now, when I'm talking about the Ki-Rin, we do need to take a look at its stat block first, because you're not going to use the Ki-Rin in combat as much, and that's because the Ki-Rin is not a fighter. Where did I put its stat block? There it is. Oh, go away, Ki-Rin. Just pushing buttons over here. Now, it is a CR12 in the 5th edition coming out of Mordekainen's, which means you're getting into the domain level play, and which means this thing is going to be a tough little guy. It's going to be your threat for your evil party as they get into level 10. And of course, when they face it at level 12, it is a spellcaster, but most of its spells are to guard itself or just general support spells. Nothing combat oriented. You know, it has major image, banishment, calm emotions, greater restoration, plane shift, pro good and evil, windwalk, revivify. A lot of it is just your general benevolent miracle stuff, which means when you're running these, its spellcasting isn't gonna be the biggest factor in its arsenal. Um, it has a hoof attack, horn attack, and a sacred fire attack. So it can attack from range, a long range at 120 feet. So kind of how this thing is probably going to fight is it's going to be trying to keep its distance. as much as it can, because Ki-Rin naturally won't want to fight. And that's why we're not talking about combat yet. I just wanted to put up its stat block to kind of give you kind of an idea of what we're looking at. It's fast with a flying speed of 120 feet. It has spell casting, legendary resistance, magic resistance, passive perception of 19, true sight of 30 feet, dark vision up to 120 feet, which means this thing knows your players are coming. It probably hears them. It knows your players are coming. It knows what's going on in its area, and you're probably not going to be able to sneak up on the thing. Now, of course, the Ki-Rin, from a story wise, it is a guide. It can serve as a guide. It can serve as a patron, as a messenger, as it comes in. If you want to include it in a lower level campaign that's planning on rising up to the level 10, level 12 area, it might be a quest giver. It might be that at your level 3 adventure for your party is to scale up the mountain, to face the dangers of the caves below it and the trials that the Ki-Rin has laid out, to meet with it and receive its blessing. Now, like I said, these are celestial messengers and guides. So you want to pick which deity in your world it worships and it follows. So, and that can kind of tell a little bit about it, how it looks, what it does. If it is a follower of Tyr or a deity of war and justice, it might strike down evil and bring adventurers in to strike down evil, and it may protect an area. Or if it's supposed to be like follower of a deity of wisdom, maybe it's up there in like a monastery training monks, teaching them the proper ways of doing living their lives. Now, of course, it can be a quest giver, which is great. The quest giver role for these things in lower to mid level parties is great. Um, as the party gets up there, they have to journey up to the mountain. They receive its blessing. Of course, it mentions that there's a great evil coming in. This gives you access and the ability to for your players to really latch on to the Ki-Rin. And that's what you want, because these things can talk. They're telepathic, but they can talk. Um, of course, if you don't want it to be that all-encompassing, like, this is our patron, this is our quest giver, this is who we go to, um, the option is that it could just be a mystery. The Ki-Rin keeps to itself. They say there's an ancient monastery on the hill, and every once in a while, people go up, they don't come down. Those that do come down talk of meeting a wise sage and a wise being who taught it many things. And that can hook the players for a side quest where they just go up and meet a Ki-Rin. Of course, it might be more than that, because it can be a messenger. The Ki-Rin can come forward. You're getting up to the domain level. Player party is level 12, level 13, level 14, level 15. Ki-Rin comes up. The cleric is there, gives him the quest from its god. Oh, you are called to do this. You are called to fight this evil. You are called to face the evil king. Your domain level play, you're going to be able to face down the evil. Kill the beholder in the basement. Face the lich in the dungeon. It's just a simple messenger. It might be weaker than the players at that point. Um, I think I or I think the way that you run this thing is very much as a background character. You don't want it helping all the time. You don't want it being there. You want it to be, kind of there doing its thing. Um, of course, Ki-Rins are a huge thing, because if they're showing up telling somebody about a great leader that's coming, or a cleric that will helping the cleric rise to the archpriest role, um, it's a major shift. We're at domain level play. One of these things shows up, it's going to change everything, because these things have so much force around them. Well, it's not force, sorry, weight around them. These are direct messengers, direct guardians, direct uh beings of sacred airs. They come from their Aries in the celestial realm with tasks of their deity. Now, of course, if you're running an evil campaign, or maybe you want them to fight a Ki-Rin. Maybe the Ki-Rin has been corrupted in some way. Maybe it has fallen. Maybe it serves a different deity than you would expect. But in all honesty, it's still a Ki-Rin. And you want to fight this thing. Well, there's a few ways to give your good side players a way to fight it. Make them learn how, this thing has been corrupted, who it serves. Maybe it doesn't serve a good deity. Maybe it's trying to cause chaos. Maybe its role of guardianship has become less, I am here to protect the land, and more, I am here to protect my new home. And has become an evil ruler. And you're trying to take back its sacred place and destroy the Ki-Rin. Maybe another Ki-Rin came and told them to take it down. Of course, these are just plot hooks. There are a ton of plot hooks that you can run with this. A Ki-Rin arrives, gives a prophecy of great disaster, and maybe they have to protect the Ki-Rin as it moves to its sacred place. Maybe the Ki-Rin comes to them and says, your deity finds you worthy, but I do not believe you are worthy of this weapon or this boon. Face my trials. And it's all about facing the Ki-Rin's trials and overcoming them. They wouldn't be combat trials. They would be value trials. Who do you save? What do you do in this scenario? How do you survive? How far will you go? And do you have the moral fortitude for this? Of course, maybe it's just simple. My realm is under attack. The Ki-Rin comes. My realm is under attack. They are coming for me. Please. And now they have to defend the Ki-Rin. They have to protect the Ki-Rin, take back its home. Maybe a dragon moved in. These things perk on high Aries and build extravagant palaces. Palace is as described within Mordecaians, they build a mix between palace and temple. So maybe a dragon moved in, and now the Ki-Rin's going, there's a dragon in my home, remove it. And now you got a dragon slaying quest. There's so many plot hooks that you can go with these because of what the Ki-Rin represents, because of where it makes its home. There's a number of different ways. Of course, after you have your plot hook ready, when you're getting prepped, when you get there, when you start giving the great prophecy to your players, you have to recognize that they're going to have questions. And the Ki-Rin is going to have to answer them. You're going to have to roleplay this guy, which means when you're building the Ki-Rin and making who the Ki-Rin is, they have personality. They're not drones. They're divine messengers. But they are still things. They have intelligence, wisdom, charisma. High all stats, by the way. Holy crap, 21 strength, 16 dex, 16 con, 19 intelligence, 20 wisdom, 20 charisma, with immunity to poison and telepathy up to 30 feet. Now, when it comes in, you have to roleplay these. And there's a few things you need to take note of. Ki-Rins are divine messengers. They're depicted as very wise, and they're depicted as peaceful beings, serene, but powerful. The way I would describe a Ki-Rin is meek. It knows it's strong. It knows it's powerful, and it's accepted that it won't use that. When you bring him, you want to emphasize that it is affecting the area around them, that there's this presence to it. There's a regality to it and a reverence when you approach the Ki-Rin, or when the Ki-Rin approaches you. Maybe it's this big moment when the Ki-Rin enters the city gates. The Ki-Rin enters the city gates, and the guards drop to their knees. The people clear the way. There's this moment of honor when this thing enters the city. When a Ki-Rin arrives, it foretells a major moment of the world. And you want to emphasize that. You want to add the weight of the encounter. Use the weather. It is storming, and this thing breaks the storm immediately. It is benevolent, and has immense power. The players should feel honored when this thing comes. And of course, if the players feel honored, this thing, of course, knows its role. It knows it is to give its message. It knows it is to guard this area. And when the players are done talking to this thing, when they leave, they should feel its presence leaving. Of course, if they are not reverent towards it, if they are not open to how this thing moves towards them, then then this thing could become angry. This thing could become frustrated. They are not worthy to be in its presence. Again, messengers of the deity. Think angels. Think what would happen when an angel arrived. People in horror, people in awe. And if one of your players is sitting there joking, maybe this thing stops being so kind. Maybe it stops its message short and says, I see I have found the wrong people. I see you are not the ones worth this task. You are not up to it. You are not worthy to fulfill your role. And again, we're at divine level play. We're at the play where the deities um, a vested interest in the characters. Not a major one. They're not archpriests yet. They're not archdruids. They're not apex wizards, but they're getting there. They're the deities are now looking at them going, them, yes, they're the heroes. So domain level play, the deities are taking notice and they send the Ki-Rin. And of course, if the Ki-Rin decides, I don't understand what they see in you, and leaves. Ooh, what a gut punch to the party. Um, of course, combat. Getting off of that moment, we got to talk combat. Um, in combat, this thing will play a support role. Sure, it can do its melee. It doesn't have the strongest melee. Um, its spell attacks are its strongest thing. It's Sacred Fire with its +9 to hit, 120 feet, 3d8 +5, and can make 2 of those attacks. So it makes 2 of those attacks turns, which means it's probably not going to be fighting alone. It's only got 153 health. It's tough. It might choose to stay in the fight because it will want to protect its allies. It will want to protect the people, the acolytes who are defending it, the people around it, but it won't be fighting alone. I think it's very important to note that the thing only has 153 hit points, which means a good party at level 12 will one round this thing if they get the chance, just from high level spells and high level attacks alone. So what you'll want to do is put I hate to use the term fodder, but as a DM, you want to put fodder in the way. You want things to eat up abilities. You want reasons why the wizard might use its lightning bolt on something else or its fireball when this thing's not in the area. Um you want to give it reasons to not engage in the fight at all. If the players are out for blood on this thing, and I know players, they're probably going to be out for blood on this thing. If they are out for blood on a Ki-Rin, it can run. This thing will run. I have no doubt. Like, it's regal, it's noble, it's thing, but this thing will run. This thing, this thing isn't looking for a fight. This thing's not looking to challenge itself. This thing doesn't care. It needs to survive. So it has plane shift. If the fight turns and not in its favor, you 100% bet this thing is going to plane shift. And I don't blame it for plane shifting. It would plane shift away. That's just what would happen. So make sure when you're running this thing in a fight that it is playing the support role. Make sure that it has a war priest with it. Make sure that it has priests around it. You want to build essentially a balanced party around it of defenders. So you want somebody up in front. You want somebody in the back. You want spellcasters, because this thing will teach magic. This thing will teach celestial magic. It'll bring clerics in, which means you get to play in that realm of building other enemies. The Ki-Rin is not the threat here. When the fight breaks out, the Ki-Rin plays the support role, which means the Ki-Rin is not the threat here. The people that it has around it, those are the threat here. The Ki-Rin is just support. It doesn't have cure wounds, but it has major image, dispel magic. Well, it does have Cure Wounds. Sorry, Lesser Restoration. Again, most of its spells are support spells. It's gonna take the fighter out with Banishment. It's gonna keep its guys up with Cure Wounds. It's gonna use Major Image to make sure people can't find it. They're gonna cast Protection from good and evil. It's gonna walk on the wind. It's just gonna fly around throwing spells. This thing's gonna fight in the air. It's gonna stay out of the fight. It's gonna let its clerics do its work for it. And so make sure that when they fall, you note to your players that the Ki-Rin is scared. Um, the Ki-Rin can be scared. The Ki-Rin should be scared. If players are after this thing, if you have an evil party after this thing, they're gonna be going nuts. But it's not afraid to fight. If it is backed into a corner, it will strike out like a wild animal. Oh, 100% it'll strike out like a wild animal. It will go and it will butcher everything in its path. It'll fight. It'll do everything it needs to make sure it can. And this thing can fight. With its horn attacks may not be that strong, but it gets 2 hoof attacks, which means 2d4 plus 5 plus 9 to hit. If a player has 22 AC, which isn't unheard of at level 12, 22 AC, they need a 13 to hit, so it hits just under half the time. Um, that's not a bad hit rate with about a 70% hit rate, I'd say. Um, not a 70, sorry, not a 77% hit rate. Sorry, it needs a 13 to hit over that. Wow, my math brain just I was in DM brain for too long. My math brain wasn't on. It sorry, less than half. Sorry, it has a 7. Anything less than 22, it's gonna hit pretty readily, and with 3 attacks, it'll do about 8, 9, probably about 10 damage in attack. So maybe estimate about it can do about 20 damage a round. And then, of course, it does have legendary actions, so it can make hoof attacks. Again, its major attack is gonna be that Sacred Fire, which probably will do about an average of 16 damage per hit. Um Which isn't bad. 16 damage per hit, so and it can do 2 attacks and then 1 each. And so total of 5 attacks if it has the range on it. Um Damaging about 60 damage an attack. That's a pretty good attack pool. Um so it's going to be getting damage on them. This thing will fight, but it's mostly going to plane shift to flee. It is trying to run. It wants to live. It also won't double tap players. Uh Honestly, I talk about that enough. Which creatures will double tap? And we talked about red caps. That was very much this thing will double tap you. No, this thing isn't. Um, of course, in summary, we got to talk about the Ki-Rin. Overall, now how do we feel about this? With it being this draconic horse from mythology and the many different roles that it can fill, from antagonist to ally to neutral force. Um, Honestly, you should be integrating this into your campaign. This is a really easy thing to integrate into campaigns and to be your thing for one shots. You should definitely be putting these in. And of course, how would you use these? How would you use these against your players? Um, Maybe it would be the if it's fighting an evil campaign or you're doing an evil one shot. This thing's gonna be what kind of plots would these have? Because these guys would be more schemers than anything. They've got the intelligence for it. What kind of plots would they be scheming? Um, of course, in the comments, tell me how you've used it. I want to know how you use this kind of thing. And let me know. Of course, also, um, we'll be here next week with another great creature. Um, you made it this far, or you're listening live and you're at the end of the podcast. I'm your GM Isaiah. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and of course, leave me a comment. It's like tipping the bellhop. And if you want to see us stick around, just interact with us more. And we'll see you guys next time.